Once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered, weak and weary, over many a quaint and curious volume of forgotten lore. While I nodded, nearly napping, suddenly there came a tapping, as if someone gently rapping on my chamber door. "'Tis some visitor," I muttered, tapping at my chamber door. "Only this, and nothing more." And the silken, sad, uncertain rustling of each paper curtain thrilled me, filled me with fantastic terrors I never felt before, so that now, to still the beating of my heart, I stood repeating, "'Tis some visitor entreating entrance at my chamber door. Some late visitor entreating entrance at my chamber door. This is it, and nothing more." The Raven, by Edgar Allan Poe.
Late visitors are indeed at your door. Incessant knocking wakes you up out of the deep sleep. You look at your clock and wonder why someone is knocking at your front door so late at night. You get up, walk to the door, and cautiously peer through the peephole, and you find 2 kids on your doorstep. Concerned, you open the door. One of the children immediately demands, "Let us in!" A chill runs down your spine, although you don't know why. It's cold outside and you want to help these kids, but something seems off. You just don't know what. "Let us in," the child says, more demanding this time. You start to feel threatened by these kids, panic mounting in your chest. "Let us in," the kid says one more time, angry this time. His eyes meet yours, and you catch your breath. Its eyes are solid black. Tonight, we stare into the abyss, and the abyss stares back on this truly creepy episode of Snipe Hunt.
Hello, listeners. This is Snipe Hunt, your frightening folklore podcast. I'm your host, Darren Young.
And I am your host, Gary Klevenstein. We're getting closer to Halloween, so every episode this month is going to be a little spookier. And tonight is no exception.
That's right. But before we get to that, we have a Facebook recommendation. Cameron is the one who left a review, and he is not biased in any way, just because he was on the show. And he said this.
Hilarious and informative podcast. Anyone will enjoy this.
And if you listen to the Dragon episode, you know that's exactly what Cameron sounds like. Thank you for that review, Cameron. We recently hit a kind of a rut in reviews, so if you haven't left one yet, now's the perfect time. I'm doing the finger guns at you. I know you can't see me, but that's what I'm doing.
I know we say this a bunch, but these reviews really help us out. And, by showing our gratitude, we will thank you on the show.
Yes, and we say this every time because it's so important.
Yes, yeah. I mean, it just helps get seen. More people.
Yeah, whatever the iTunes algorithm is or whatever you listen to podcasts on, the more reviews, the better. The more reviews, the more people will see this, the more people will listen, and we can continue to do the show.
Yes. This episode that we're doing tonight is covers one of the things that me and Darren both find extremely spooky, beyond spooky.
Absolutely. I didn't know you were unnerved by it either.
Oh no, it is. Ever since you told me about it and I researched it, I was like, oh god,
right?
Because kids are creepy anyways.
Well, continue on.
All right,
spoiler alert.
Yeah.
Not that people haven't read the title of this episode.
Now, this episode definitely covers one of the more fantastical phenomenons that we have talked about, except dragons, obviously.
Obviously.
Yeah, but it is definitely one of the most unnerving.
Yes.
Darren, quit stalling and let's get into tonight's subject.
Fine. I've been avoiding tonight's subject as we mentioned earlier, it creeps me out like nothing else, so in the spirit of Halloween, I've finally decided to talk about this, just to exercise the fear part of my brain, and hopefully I freak out the listeners as well, and hopefully you, Gary.
Oh, absolutely.
I love spooky stuff. Halloween is my favorite holiday. I watch all kinds of shows and read all kinds of books and listen to all kinds of podcasts about scary subjects, and I'm fine with all of it. None of it really freaks me out or gets my goat, so to speak. All of it except for the black-eyed kids. For whatever reason, they spook me more than anything else. And I believe that's the same reason why I'm so fascinated by them.
I'm telling you, it's just because it's kids, dude.
Yeah, well, that's
creepy.
part of it. That's part of it, for sure. I think I have a few more reasons besides just kids as to why exactly they scare the pants off me. But before we get into that, let's discuss what a black-eyed kid, or BEK, actually is.
Well, it's a kid with black eyes.
That's right. It is a kid with black eyes. It's in the name. But let's go into a little bit more detail, I guess, since, usually we do that. Honestly, I think the best way to describe them is to hear the story that brought them into the zeitgeist in the first place. This is the story that made the BEKs well known. This is journalist Brian Bethel's experience, which he first posted online in a Ghost Encounter mailing list. Here's a paraphrased version of his story, as it's found in the Wayback Machine Internet Archive. My internet service provider used to have offices in a shopping center before they moved to their accommodations elsewhere. There was a Dropbox at the original location. The monthly bill was due, and thus, there but for the grace of the net, I went. It was about 9:30 p.m. when I left. From my relatively isolated apartment, it's about 10 to 15 minutes or so to downtown Abilene. Right next to Camelot Communications' old location is a $1.50 movie theater. At the time, the place was featuring the film Mortal Kombat. I drove by the theater on the way to the center proper and pulled into an empty parking space. Using the glow of the marquee to write out my check, I was startled to hear a knock on the driver's side window of my car. I looked over and saw two children staring at me from the street. Both were boys, and my initial impression was that they were somewhere between 10 to 14. Boy number 1 was the spokesman. Boy number 2 didn't speak during the entire conversation. Boy number 1 was slightly taller than his companion, wearing a pullover, hooded shirt with some sort of gray checked pattern and jeans. I didn't see his shoes. His skin was olive-colored and had curly, medium-length brown hair. He exuded an air of quiet confidence. Boy number 2 had pale skin with a trace of freckles. His primary characteristic seemed to be looking around nervously. He was dressed in a similar manner to his companion, but his pullover was a light green color. His hair was a sort of pale orange. They didn't appear to be related, at least not directly. Oh great, I thought. They're gonna hit me up for money. So there I was, filling out a check in my car, which was still running, and in a sudden panic over the appearance of two little boys. I was confused, but an overwhelming sense of fear and unearthliness rushed in nonetheless. The spokesman smiled, and the sight, for some inexplicable reason, chilled my blood. I could feel fight or flight responses kicking in. Something, I knew instinctively, was not right, but I didn't know what it could possibly be. I rolled down the window very slightly and asked, "Yes?" The spokesman smiled again, broader this time. His teeth were very, very white. "Hey, mister, what's up? We have a problem," he said. His voice was that of a young man, but his diction, quiet, calm, and something I still couldn't put my finger on, made my desire to flee even greater. "You see, my friend and I want to see the films, but we forgot our money," he continued. "We need to go to our house to get it. Want to help us out?" Okay. Journalists are required to talk to lots of people, and that includes children. I have seen and spoken to lots of them. In short, they're usually apologetic. People generally teach children that when they talk to adults, they're usually bothering them for one reason or another, and they should at least be polite. This kid in no way was fitting the mold. His command of the language was incredible, and he showed no signs of fear. He spoke as if my help was a foregone conclusion. Well, was the best reply I could offer. Now here's where it starts to get strange. The quiet companion looked at the spokesman with a mixture of confusion and guilt on his face. He seemed in some ways shocked, not with his friend's brusque manner, but that I didn't just immediately open the door. The spokesman seemed a bit perturbed too. I was still registering something wrong with both. "Come on, mister," the spokesman said again. "Now we just want to go to our house, and we're just two little boys." That really scared me. Something in the tone and diction again set off alarm bells. My mind was frantically trying to process what it was perceiving about the two figures that was, quote, wrong. "What movie are you going to see?" I asked finally. "Mortal Kombat, of course," the spokesman said. The silent one nodded in affirmation, standing a few paces behind. "Oh," I said. I stole a quick glance at the marquee and the clock in my car. Mortal Kombat had been playing for an hour, the last showing of the evening. The silent one looked increasingly nervous. I think he saw my glances and suspected that I might be detecting something that was not above board. "Come on, mister. Let us in. We can't get in your car until you do, you know," the spokesman said soothingly. "Just let us in, and we'll be gone before you know it. We'll go to our mother's house." I realized my hand had strayed toward the door lock, which was engaged, and was in the process of opening it. I pulled it away, probably a bit too violently, but it did force me to look away from the children. I turned back, and for the first time, I noticed their eyes. They were coal black. No pupil, no iris. Just two staring orbs reflecting the red and white light of the marquee. At this point, I knew my expression betrayed me. The silent one had a look of horror on his face in a combination of what seemed to indicate A, the impossible had just happened, and B, we've been found out. The spokesman, on the other hand, wore a mask of anger. His eyes glittered brightly in the half-light. "Come on, mister," he said. "We won't hurt you. You have to let us in. We don't have a gun." That last statement scared the living hell out of me, because at that point, by his tone, he was plainly saying, "We don't need a gun." I noticed my hand shooting down towards the gear shift. The spokesman's final words contained an anger that was complete and whole, and yet contained in some respects a tone of panic. "We can't come in unless you tell us it's okay. Let us in." I ripped the car into reverse and tore out of the parking lot. I noticed the boys in my peripheral vision, and I stole a quick glance back. They were gone. The sidewalk by the theater was deserted. I drove home in a heightened state of panic. Had anyone attempted to stop me, I would have run through and faced the consequences later. I bolted into my house, scanning all around, including the sky. What did I see? Maybe nothing more than some kids looking for a ride. And some real funky contacts. Yeah, right. I'm still not sure what they were. So that's the end of the story, but before we go any further, he added a little epilogue, so why don't you go and read that?
I called my best friend Chad and talked to him briefly. He had two female friends with him at the time, both professing some type of psychic ability. I started telling him the story, leaving out the part about the black eyes for the kicker. One of the women, we were on speakerphone, stopped me. "These children had black eyes, right?" she asked. "I mean, all black eyes." Yeah, I said. I was a bit taken back. She said. "One night last week, I had a dream about children with black eyes. They were outside my house, wanting to be let in, but there was something wrong with them. It took me a while to realize it was the eyes. I hadn't even gotten as far in the story as them wanting to come in." "What did you do?" I asked. "I kept the doors and windows locked," she said. "I knew if they came in, they would kill me." She paused. "And they would have killed you, too, if you had let them into the car."
Alright, so that's the epilogue. So let's get down to what basically happened was he was filling out his check for the drop-off box, and two kids came up.
Just stared at him.
Yeah, two kids came up, and immediately he felt terrified, but he had no idea why. Just like that, immediately.
It's like when you can feel somebody staring at you.
So he is a journalist, so that's why it sounded like a story from a book, because he's a writer.
Right.
So that's why it sounded like that. That's not any blow to the validity of the story. That's
Right.
just how he writes. He just writes in a very narrative manner. So that's why it's so well written, and that's why I appreciated reading it. He said he's interviewed kids before. They tend to be apologetic. They tend to be fidgety. They kind of, mumble the words.
It's weird. It seems like one. It's almost like situations like the Madagascar penguins or Pinky and the Brain. How there's one that's the one that's the.
You lost me.
Do you not get what I'm saying? There's two of them.
Okay.
One of them is the antagonizer.
Spokesman.
He's the antagonizer, and the other one is just kind of he's just there.
Yeah. I mean, it almost seemed like this guy, the spokesman, knew what he was doing, and the other guy was the rookie.
That's what I was saying, like Pinky and the Brain, which is Madagascar
weird.
Penguins.
I mean, I guess if it's just a shy kid and like a bold kid, but so this kid starts talking to him very clearly, very adult-like diction. Probably could speak better than we do on the podcast because we're very mushmouth a lot of times, and he's still feeling this panic, and they're asking him just to let them in, and he doesn't want to. And despite not wanting to, he finds his hand is still reaching towards the door to unlock it anyway, like almost against his will. But he was able to get control back, and that's when he looked, and that's when he saw the black guy.
This is what I would do. Okay, here I am.
And so
I'm writing a check.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And then I look over, and there's two kids just staring at me.
Well, they knocked on your window first.
Oh, well, they knocked on the window.
Scaring the bejesus out of you.
Right.
I don't care who knocks on my window. If it's nighttime and I'm writing a check in my car and someone knocks on my window, I don't care who it is. They're gonna scare me.
If it's two children, yes.
Yeah.
That's I'm putting it in drive.
Yeah.
And I'm leaving. I don't even want to hear what they have to say.
Yeah. No, I get you. I'd be the same way. He probably thought they were like maybe a little too young to be like that, but. They claim they're going to see Mortal Kombat. They just need to pick up, money or something. Yeah, they need to pick up money first from the kid's house. But they were asking a complete stranger to drive them to the parents' house, which is weird. I mean, it's already weird. But then after he takes back his hand, he looks up. He has all black eyes. And I've heard interviews with this guy, and he said he looked away for maybe like half a second. So it's not like they had time to like put in contacts. So it's either
they had regular eyes at first.
I think he was under the impression that he didn't really notice their eyes at first, so they could have been black the whole time, or they could have been like anything else, which is kind of odd. If they are trying to mask their black eyes, they were doing a pretty good job, because usually you look someone in the eye when you're talking to them. And I'm assuming especially someone who's as socially oriented as a journalist,
right?
But I think he was under the impression that they were like masking their black eyes in some way, so they didn't really have time to put in contacts. And if you are wearing black contacts and this is sort of like some sort of weird prank,
I imagine them.
I
imagine them wearing a hood.
Yeah, they're wearing their hooded shirts. I don't know if they were wearing their hoods on them or anything. Right. It doesn't really mention the story.
I think that's got to be what it is.
It could be. They were probably like using their hood
to shadow out their face. Yeah.
So it could have been that. But that's when he decided to get the hell out of Dodge. Right. Yeah, understandably.
Let's get to the description.
Well, actually, one more thing I want to point out is that when he was driving away, once again, he looked away for just a second. He could still see in the peripherals. He looked back in the mirror. They were gone. And this was in the middle of a parking lot at night, so there was like nowhere they could have gone to hide as quickly as he looked back and away. So that's the thing I want to mention. So, but yeah, let's go ahead and get the description.
Black-eyed kids are beings that appear to be people as kids, usually boys, usually in pairs. They are usually dressed in nondescript clothing and try to blend in, but usually fail with whomever they interact with, as the victim usually gets the feeling that something is wrong.
I didn't realize I put so many usuallys in there. That was like 5 and 2
sentences. Oh, was there? I didn't even know
It's okay. It's fine.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
I am A+ writer, guys. Don't worry.
They approach people and ask to be invited into a space, such as the house or a car, for any unknown purpose. It seems that they cannot enter the victim's space without permission. Their appearance usually causes an intense feeling of dread or panic. The titular black eyes are usually not noticed until later in the encounter. When they see that they aren't getting what they want, they usually react with anger, and their cool temperament is replaced with something akin to urgent rage. What happens if they do give them what they ask for? What happens when you let them inside? We'll find out later in the episode.
Spoiler alert, it's not good.
Yeah.
Surprise, I know. So now a lot of people have issues with the validity of this subject because there have been a lot of creepypasta stories about BEKs. If you don't know, creepypastas are fictional horror short stories that are shared on different websites and forums. The name comes from copypasta, which came from copy-paste. But I've heard interviews with Brian, and he definitely seems genuine and is adamant that the BEKs are real and did not originate from a fictional story in similar fashion to Slenderman. Because Slenderman, we can find the origin of that. That came from copypasta, or creepypasta, I'm sorry.
Man, it blew up, didn't it?
Yes, it did. And the Black Eyed Kids blew up in their own little way as well. That was part of the reason I didn't want to cover this subject because a lot of other people have already covered it. Mm-hmm. So, but I think I can bring something new to the table. So let's see if I can. There's actually no proof that the BK did start out as that. Unlike Slenderman, like I said, there is proof of that. There are actually plenty of other encounters and even similar folklore that predate Brian's experience. I think Brian's experience happened in the 90s, whenever the first Mortal Kombat movie came out. So. Mm-hmm. But it did make this subject kind of difficult to research, as these creepypastas are always written as if the stories are real. And because of the nature of the creepypasta stories, you can find them on nearly every website that has to do with the paranormal. So I had kind of a hard time trying to figure out what was an actual true experience and what was fiction.
Yeah, I mean, what does it matter? They're all creepy anyways.
I mean, yeah, but I'm here to talk about the real stuff. Right, I don't want to talk about some fanfic.
Right.
That's a different podcast. Not suitable for you. I'm just kidding.
Well, let's move on to our next encounter from G. Michael Vasey's book, The Thrilling True Terror of the Black Eyed Kids. Dun, dun, dun. This experience was described as being submitted by an anonymous woman in Odessa, Texas. One evening, I was sitting in my bedroom reading a book. It must have been around 1 a.m. and was a Friday night. My husband worked nights, so I usually tried to stay up for him. I heard a knocking. It wasn't a normal knock. It was a slow, constant one. I got up out of bed to see what it was. I looked out of the window and to my surprise saw two young children. They replied by saying simply, "Let us in." Now, I didn't recognize these children at all. They weren't the kids from next door. They were dressed in black clothes and looked dirty. I did wonder if they were runaways, and it did cross my mind to call the sheriff. I said no, and asked what for, and all I got back from them was, "We want to use your bathroom." I was quite shocked that children of, I'd say, about 10 years old wanted to use a stranger's bathroom at this time of night, so I told them no. I closed the window, but looked at them through the glass, and to my surprise, I glanced at their eyes, and I have never seen eyes like them. They were black, completely black. I got the feeling of evil and unhappiness. It surrounded me. It was horrible. The knocking continued for 2 hours. A slow but rhythmic knocking that reached all around the house. I picked up the phone several times, but the phone line was dead. I didn't dare look outside again. When my husband arrived home, he said that he didn't see anything outside. I told him about the phone and he checked it. It was live. I haven't seen the kids since.
So this is your pretty typical story as Black Eyed Kids go. I mean, I think the one new thing I noticed that the phone line was dead, which was interesting. So they seemed to target her because she was home alone and obviously she couldn't call for help. And black guys are not. If kids are knocking on your door in the middle of the night asking to use the bathroom, they're not there to use the bathroom. I don't care whose kids they are. I don't care how normal their eyes are. You just don't let them in anyway. But
I wouldn't even use strangers' bathrooms.
No,
at work.
No, exactly. And they knocked for 2 hours.
Right.
Can you imagine how terrifying that would be?
That would drive me nuts.
Yeah, it would drive you nuts. But imagine you just go to the door and there were two kids with black eyes, pitch black eyes. Not just like shadows covering their eyes, like their eyes are actually black, and they're just knocking outside your door for 2 hours going, "Let us in, and there's nothing you can do about it.
I would just point and be like, what is that back there? And then make them, like maybe they look at distraction and then run out the back door.
I don't know. I'd probably pull hers. I'd be like, I'm just going to wait for my significant other to get home because I don't want to go outside. I wouldn't want to go outside, and obviously you can't call for help, so what do you do in that situation?
I guess I don't know.
Curl up in the corner Hope for the best.
Cry
Don't let them
myself
in.
to
That's what you do. That's what
Don't
you
let them
yes. What you don't do is let them in. All right, so I made some random notes as I was researching this, so they're just like random observations. So I'm just going to go through them now. So one thing that makes this phenomenon unique amongst other paranormal encounters is that they actually like come to your house. Mm-hmm. You don't go to a haunted location. You don't invite something. They just show up out of the blue, which is weird. These things seem to disguise themselves as kids. I think for the reason it's our natural inclination to help children. So it's kind of like they're trying to deceive us. It's like, oh, they'll let us in.
They'll definitely,
we're just two little kids. Surely we're not threatening at all. But for whatever reason, they are threatening despite just being two little kids. But I just think it's creepy that they're just.
I think one for the eyes. I think they'd be all right.
Yeah, I think that's like so. Another thing I want to mention that they say that eyes are portal to the soul. So what if their soul is black? But that's the thing that seems to be their disguise isn't perfect. That seems to be the one thing that they can't hide or disguise. Or if they can, they don't seem to be able to do it for very long. But maybe that's their true nature being revealed, and despite the already present feelings of fear and dread. So another thing is that they speak very clearly and deliberately, much more like an adult. That's usually a person's first clue that there's something not quite right here. Like I said, kids tend to stumble over words. They tend to be a little fidgety, and these kids are just directly, hey, let us in. We want to use your bathroom.
Yeah.
And it's often in a monotone voice, so it's even weirder.
I should have read that I should have done more monotone in the read.
No, it's fine. So another thing is another weird thing is they need permission to enter your space. Very similar to the typical vampire needs to be invited inside, or even like a demon needs to be invited into your body before it can possess you. So that's weird. Maybe this whole thing is just kids and with weird contacts or just paranoid people, and they're just like, hey, let us in. They're just being polite, and obviously they're not going to force their way into anywhere. I mean, I don't know, but still weird. Especially that first kid, he was like, you have to let us in. You have to invite us in. We can't come in unless you do, So
I'm like, well, there's more of a reason to say
yeah,
that.
exactly. We don't have a gun. Oh, well, come on in, boys. And like I said, I mentioned this before, is the instant dread or panic. Brian Bethel described it as the fight or flight response, and which is a natural rush of adrenaline we get when we sense danger. And it seems to be instinctual because he didn't know why he got this response. He just knew that he did. So like kind of like when you're out and about, like maybe you're fishing at a creek or something and you see a snake, you instantly get, oh my gosh, there's a snake.
Yeah.
It was like that. And also you can also do it with spiders if you're arachnophobic or just other primal threats. So it seems something like the reason why we're scared of snakes and spiders instinctively is because our ancestors learned that they were a huge danger to us. Yeah, and so it's kind of an instinctual fear, kind of like what we talked about with the dragons. Right. So it's very weird that these things trigger the exact same thing, are a primal instinctual fear that we got because of real dangers to us.
Gut feelings are real, man.
Yes.
You get a gut feeling about something. It's usually accurate.
A gut feeling on steroids.
Right. As we mentioned earlier, there's existing folklore from several different cultures that talk about these BEKs. This phenomenon recently seems to only happen in the United States, but those legends will prove that at least similar phenomena have happened all over the world. For the first example of this is kind of dubious, but definitely worth mentioning. And this is the Iroquois legend of Otcon. Now, the term Otcon is definitely real and seems to be something akin to meaning evil force or evil spirit, and seems to be an all-encompassing term for malefic beings. Malefic.
So I'll explain why I'm slightly skeptical about this one once we explain Otcon in more detail, but just know that...
No, in my defense with that word, by the way, I'm going back because I'm not... I can't even say that movie that Angelina Jolie does or whatever.
Maleficent?
Maleficent or whatever. Can't ever say the name of the dang movie.
That's fair.
According to G. Michael Vasey's book, the Otcon was a dark power that could possess children. There was also an evil one who would reproduce with human females, which would result in black-eyed, pale-skinned children. These demonic offspring would immediately be killed by the tribe, who would also burn the remains to prevent the evil child from resurrecting. Children wandering the wilderness could be taken over by Otcon and would return to the tribe with black eyes and a strange demeanor. The goal of these possessed children was to destroy the tribe and infect all with the evil spirit of Otcon.
Now, I said according to Vasey's book is because when I was researching this, I was able to verify Otcon was an actual thing, but I couldn't find a primary source saying that this Otcon possessed children and specifically turned their eyes black. The only sources I could find on that were those that were already talking about the black-eyed kids phenomenon anyway, so I wasn't able to find anything to confirm it, basically. Right. So who knows? But, I thought it was definitely worth mentioning.
Indian mythology has a similar entity in the form of the Akari.
No, I think it's a Churi.
A Churi.
I have no idea.
I like that.
I have no idea.
No, a Churi sounds
a
a lot better.
Churi.
I would have said Akari, and a Churi sounds a lot better.
I like Akari better, but we'll go with the Churi.
Also referred to as hill fairies. A Churi. Yeah, sorry. Are the ghosts of young female children who were either murdered or abused and left to die. They are said to have dark, unnatural eyes. They live on the uninhabited mountains but will descend into towns and villages at night. It is said that to meet an Achuri is to meet death.
Meet death.
Yeah, meet death. That's how I want to. No, meet. I was gonna say I want to meet death.
So just to be clear, this is Asian Indian folklore. There are a lot of sources that mistakenly refer to the Achuri as American Indian ghosts, but we'll delve into a little bit more of the Achuri later. Now we have some other beings that share similarities with the BEKs, but are less spot on than the Otcon or the Achuri. One being I was reminded of when I heard the children with black eyes was the changeling from European folklore. So why don't you tell us about that?
I would love to. A changeling was a fairy child that was left in the place of a human child who was stolen by fairies. This actually sounds kind of pleasant.
I don't know. I mean, if your child was a black-eyed kid, maybe.
A changeling child would grow and start to reveal abnormal traits, which included a sickly appearance, intelligence beyond its years, uncanny insight, and unusual physical characteristics such as long teeth or even a beard. Can you imagine a child with a beard?
I'd rather have a child with a beard than a child with black eyes.
That's true.
But as you can see, it checks a lot of the same boxes. Sickly appearance, intelligence beyond years, unusual physical characteristics.
A human child would be swapped with a changeling for a variety of reasons. Some beliefs said that fairy children need human milk to survive and grow. Others believed that the human child was taken to become a servant to the fairies.
Does it sound pleasant now?
I just when I hear the word fairy, I think of pleasant.
See, that's the thing is it's hilarious because fairies, at least in pop culture, are like super pleasant things,
right?
But they were actually like very terrifying. Like people were killed because other people thought they were fairies. They were a very evil, mischievous force. I mean, they were kind of like humans in the way they could be either good or bad, but for the most part, people didn't want anything to do with it.
Right. The myth of the changeling might have been created to explain unknown illnesses or disorders. Or the parents might have been inflicted with a mild form of Capgras syndrome, aka imposter syndrome. People who experience this syndrome will have an irrational belief that someone they know or recognize has been replaced by an imposter.
So basically, one of the possible origins for this myth is they looked at their baby like, that's not my baby. It's a fairy.
Yeah.
It's definitely not my baby. I don't know whose baby it is, but it's not mine.
It's definitely not mine.
That's a real thing. There are people who are like, who are you? I'm your husband. No, you're not. It's actually pretty comical, but until you actually think about what's happening to real people, it's very sad.
Right. Yeah.
I do want to go into fairies in a future episode, but it's just one of those things that's a really broad subject. Yeah. So I'm trying to find a good way to tackle it. But moving on.
Another similar creature is Scandinavians.
This one, it looks weird, but it's pronounced mealing.
Mealing, okay.
Yes. It's Myling.
Scandinavians mealing.
Mealing.
A mealing is the ghost of a child that was abandoned and left to die in the wilderness and left unburied. That's awful.
Mm-hmm.
They were said to haunt the home of the parents who abandoned them or even travelers on the road. Some versions state that they would climb into a person's back and
not into.
Oh,
Jesus! Taking this to a whole other level.
The version that what I was seeing in my head, I was like, "This is good." Some versions state that they would climb onto a person's back and make them walk to a graveyard, so the mealing could receive a proper resting place. The mealing would grow heavier and heavier on the victim's back, making the task more and more difficult. If the victim would fail to make it to the graveyard, the mealing would fly into a rage and kill the victim.
So, also something similar, it's a child ghost-like thing, and then if it doesn't get what it wants, then it kills you.
Nice.
Essentially. So, it flies into a rage is the main thing. Kind of like the Black Eyed Kids do. So that was just a couple of things that are pretty similar to it. I do have one more creature that is spot on with the Black Eyed Kid folklore, but I'm going to say that for later. I'm pretty excited about this one because I think I'm the only one who made this connection. I think. I'm not sure, but I think. This is the new information I was hoping I was bringing to the table.
Right. So let's find out what happens if you actually let the Black Eyed Kids inside. Luckily, almost no one who encounters these entities actually let them in, despite being compelled to do so, like in the movies. Where they're like, oh, I heard something. Let's go.
Apparently, there is a mockumentary about the Black Eyed Kids out there, but apparently it's like the worst piece of film anyone has ever seen in the entire life.
Second.
I mean, you can watch it. It's on Amazon Prime, but apparently it's just so bad.
That sucks.
So I didn't watch it for this.
But there are a unlucky few who have done so.
Let's talk about it. So this story also comes from Vasey's book. This took place in Arizona in the mid-1980s. One late evening, I woke up to loud knocks on the front door of my house. My husband was fast asleep. I didn't want to go down and open the door. It wasn't normal for us to have late-night visitors, so I did wonder if it was an accident of some type. I looked out of the window and I couldn't see anything. It was pitch black outside. I woke my husband and asked him to go down and find out what was happening. He wasn't very happy, but got up, put his robe on, and went downstairs. I watched from the landing as he opened the door. 2 children were standing there. Both looked young, and both looked like they were frozen. I know there was a boy and a girl. My husband asked them if there had been an accident. They nodded. He asked them if their parents were with them. They shook their heads. "Our parents are coming for us," one of them said. My husband was still half asleep and started closing the door. "Let us in," one of them said. "Let us in." I watched as my husband opened the door and they walked in. He was obviously not in control of his own body. He doesn't take orders, but he did that night. I could see that both of the children looked like they were 8 years old. I went downstairs and asked them if they would like to sit down. We went through to the kitchen and they sat. Our dog went crazy. I had to shut him in another room. He would not stop barking. Looking back now, he knew what these kids were. I tried to make small talk with the kids, but they didn't say anything. My husband said nothing. It was then he started complaining about stomach pains. He said he felt as though he had been, quote, stuck with a sword. I tried to help him. The kids didn't move. I left the room, and when I came back, my husband had passed out and the kids couldn't be found. I called 911 and asked for an ambulance. I didn't even think about the kids until the next day. My husband was taken to the hospital and needed to have immediate surgery to remove his appendix. The doctor said he had a rumbling appendix and would have died if he ignored it. The thing is, he never had any issue with his appendix before that night. Who were those kids? Why did they want to hurt us? I know that they caused my husband's issues, and I want to know why. Submitted by Cindy Mankiewicz from Arizona. Alright, so it starts out as your pretty typical Black Eyed Kid story. knock on door in the middle of the night, let us in. It seems like their little compulsion trick worked on this guy because he was half asleep.
He was like, whatever.
And so he actually lets the kids in. Not a good move on his part, I guess, because not too long later he was curled up on the floor in pain, apparently from appendicitis.
I was kind of hoping he was crapping his brains out. They gave him crippling diarrhea.
Yeah, and it seems like the kids kind of like just disappeared in the middle of that panic, I guess, which is weird. Well, I guess not too weird if they were black-eyed kids.
All right, we got our first appendix.
Check.
Yeah.
So she seems pretty convinced that the kids caused the appendicitis, but that's honestly just more of a guess. So did they actually cause the appendicitis, or were they like in their own weird, like supernatural way, like very horrible way of trying to warn them?
That his appendix was about to rush.
Yeah, your appendix about to rush. So let us in, and we'll just sit in your kitchen and say nothing about it until it happens.
We'll creep you out enough to where you have to call the sheriff.
Oh no, maybe they were the one that caused the pain to like. Maybe he wouldn't have felt of any pain until it was too late.
Yeah.
Oh, maybe. So are they harbingers of doom, like the worst kind ever, that will appear right before something bad is about to happen, but won't actually warn you about it, other than the warning being, "Hey, we're here." So I don't know. So I did find another quote true story where a couple let them in. The wife it was once again a couple. The wife got the feeling that the kids wanted them both dead. Immediately after she had this thought, her husband's collapsed. Once again, the kids seemed to disappear, and the husband later died of a brain aneurysm. So yeah, so they are harbingers of doom. Like I said, they're either the worst ones or worse. They're causing these things.
Yeah.
So not good. It
wouldn't be such a bad thing if like I can't remember what I'm thinking of, that there was something that appears before something bad happens.
Mothman.
Oh, was it Mothman?
Mothman appeared right before the bridge collapse, but like
but he kept appearing right before bad stuff happened.
But once again, the worst harbinger ever. He's like, "Hey, something bad's gonna happen. I'm not gonna tell you what, but something bad's gonna happen."
All right, let's go back to similar folklore that we talked about before. The Achiri, the hill fairies from Indian folklore, were said that when they came down from the mountain to a town or village, they brought disease and sickness with them. And mealings were sometimes said to suck the life force out of their victims. Both acts are similar to what happens when you let the bee keys.
I believe that's a band.
Both acts are similar to what happens when you let the black-eyed peas inside. Let's get it started.
but it is similar because we got appendicitis and a brain aneurysm. The chariots had to bring diseases and sickness with them. So very similar. And the mealings, kind of a little bit more sucking out the life force. But
I'd much rather have the appendicitis than the brain aneurysm.
Yeah, I think I would agree with that. So that brings me to the last creature that I mentioned before that I think I have only connected with the black-eyed kids. I could just be narcissistic, but I don't know. So I noticed that it seems that the majority of the BEK encounters happened in the south near Mexico. In fact, 2 of our stories tonight comes from Texas, and then that last one happened in Arizona. So all kind of the southwest area. Right. I also heard another encounter in Texas where one of the BEKs was described as looking like the ancestor of someone of Mexican heritage. I took this to mean that it looked like someone who was indigenous and to the region before the arrival of the Spaniards. So with this in mind, I started looking up creatures within the folklore of the Aztecs and the Maya, which were the indigenous peoples that lived in Mexico before the arrival of the Spaniards, just to see if anything kind of fit with that folklore. And here's what I found. I believe it's pronounced the Chenek, or the Cheneke. Which one do you like better?
I don't think that's an A. I think it's Chenek. Yeah.
Chenek. Okay,
yeah.
We'll go with Chenek. So the Chenek were small, sprite-like beings that were considered elemental forces and guardians of nature. They were described as children with the face of an elderly person. Maybe that just meant they seemed beyond their years. So they had an unusual physical characteristic on their face area. So, so I know I'm stretching it a little bit, but here's the part of the Chenek legend that really convinced me. This is from the Wikipedia page. By tradition, these beings would attack intruders, frightening them so that their soul would abandon their body, which the Cheneks enclosed in the depth of the land. If the victim did not recover their soul through a specific ritual, he or she would become ill and die soon after. So this is what really convinced me, because all of the BEK encounters have one thing in common: primal, instinctual, and intense feelings of panic and fear. So maybe this isn't just our reaction to something that we've instinctually considered a danger in the past, but maybe this is something that the black-eyed kids are doing intentionally. But I guess they're keeping their disguises to kind of like still fit in a little bit. I don't know. So one of the great mysteries of the black-eyed kids is what exactly their goal is. Maybe it's to terrify you to the extent that your soul leaves your body, leaving it open for them to steal.
Yeah, but most of the time when you're down, they leave.
Yeah, because once again, you have to invite them.
Right.
Like a demon. Like a demon can't possess you unless you invite it in. Obviously, it tries to trick you, and that it doesn't go, "Hey, I'm a demon, let me in." Fire.
What, you
fire.
never seen a demon before? Come on, let me in. I want some coffee.
So maybe the permission is like, "Let us in," aka, "Hey, can we steal your soul, please?"
Hey, we need a new body.
Hey, I like how they're New Yorkers. Forget about it.
Yeah.
I'm trying to walk here.
Trying to work here. Come on, give me your body. I ain't got all day.
So after the arrival of the Spaniards, Chineks made their way into Catholic beliefs, who described them as the souls of children who died without being baptized, and so have become demons to prey on those who wander in the jungles of Mexico. The Catholic Church kind of now acknowledges this folklore first off, and then makes it more of a demonic thing. And one of the things I don't think I've actually mentioned anywhere, but sometimes people who have encountered black-eyed children notice like a smell that comes along with it. Sometimes it's like very musty, very earthy kind of smell. Definitely not a natural one you smell for a kid. And some have even described sulfur, which is the very cliche smell that accompanies with demons.
Right.
So maybe they're full of it, or maybe the smell can help us identify what they are. I don't know.
It sounds like, what do they call it? You edit this out, but propaganda.
Yeah.
This sounds like a propaganda story to get kids baptized.
Well, it is kind of a propaganda thing. That was kind of their thing, is because at first, a little history lesson for you, Gary. First, when the Catholics came in and tried to, this actually happened over in Europe too, as well as in Mexico, but to more easily get them convert, they would kind of fuse the Catholic beliefs with the existing beliefs of the peoples there.
Right.
So they would kind of adopt like a creature like the Chinook. They'd be like, "Oh yeah, it's real, but it's also a demon." So you need to convert to God, because that's the only way you can protect yourself from these demons,
and be baptized.
and also baptize your children.
Yeah.
In the Catholic. So that's kind of what they did, and that's actually how we got Halloween. But we're not doing that right now, at least.
So one thing we need to discuss, Darren, is why
Yes.
did the black-eyed kids scare you so much?
Yeah. So, like, when I started this podcast, I was kind of avoiding it because I was like, I'm kind of terrified by it. But I was like, I bet there are actual reasons why I went. So I sat down and thought about it, and here's what I came up with. First off, I just don't like kids in general. I don't want kids. I don't like being around strange kids. Usually I just find them really annoying. So even if I see a regular kid, I'm like, nope, not gonna answer my door. So that's obviously part of it. Second, we can all agree that kids involved with the supernatural are creepy AF.
Yeah.
Horror movies use this trope all the time. Poltergeist, The Shining, Firestarter, Children of the Corn, The Grudge, The Ring, and of course, The Exorcist all agree with me on that point. Do you agree with me on that? Do you find creepy children super creepy?
Dude, that's like the worst.
I know, exactly. Like, that's why, like, if I heard like a child giggle in my house and there was no cause for it, I'd be like, I'm leaving the house. I'm out of here.
I'm done.
If I heard like just an adult laughing in my house, I'm like, well, maybe I'll see what happens. But if it's a kid, I'm out. Third, some malevolent entity. Ooh, there's another word for it. Disguising itself to manipulate its victims, especially by taking advantage of human kindness, is just the worst. So they pretend to be kids so you can take pity on them and then give them what they want. A lot of serial killers actually did this. They would pretend they were like, "Hey, can you help me find my dog?" And so it kind of plays on your human emotion, or, "Oh, I'm injured. I'm super harmless." And then, they
just your natural instinct to be helpful.
Be helpful, especially to someone who seems vulnerable. I think that's part of the reason why they show up at night, because kids aren't out at night, and they usually show up during like cold weather. So they're like, "Oh, I'm so freezing. Let me in." Don't let them in. this method of manipulation just makes the BKs like just feel more real too, because, you know, like I said, serial killers do it. I don't know. And also it makes you wonder what the true form of these beings actually are.
You know what, though, what this story is going to actually do for us later on in life is like if we do run into a couple children in need.
They actually
at
need
night.
help. Yeah.
Yeah.
We're like, nope.
We're going to grab their face and like open their eyes.
Like, shine light in there. It's true. It's true. So fourth, we don't know what these things are or what they want. We have our best guesses, but we're not like, oh, that's a ghost or oh, that's an alien. It seems they're just very shrouded in mystery. So I think we can all relate that to a fear of the unknown. And then lastly, this is probably the one that really gets me. It's the fact that they seek you out on their own. Other entities haunt a certain location or are reached by a person calling on them, or even just like something briefly seen in the distance, like, oh, I saw a shadow over the corner of my eye, or oh, Bigfoot was over there. And then they just go away. But these things, they come right up to your door, Gary. You see them face to face for an extended time, and they don't go away. Like I said, if you encounter like Bigfoot or something, as soon as he sees you, he's out of there. I mean, there have been obviously reports of Bigfoot attacks, but for the most part, it's not going to be a very long encounter. These things are going to stay there. They're going to knock on your door for 2 hours, going, let us in. Terrifying. So they're probably the boldest paranormal creatures of them all. I know, unlike other paranormal happenings, you definitely have more power over BEKs. They can't come in without permission. But even still, you're still compelled to do, like, even against your will to do as they ask. So it's kind of scary to think that you might give in subconsciously. Like, if you just let your guard down for just a second, boom.
Like that guy being half asleep.
Exactly. And now I'm even more anxious about them because they say that the more you talk about the black-eyed kids, the more likely you are to experience them. So
it's a good thing your front door has like the window up top.
Yeah, I got the window up top, and I got a peephole, and I have a gun. So, I don't know if that'll work, but hey, it's worth a shot.
Now we need to move on to established theories about what kind of beings these kids might be. We have a few options, so let's go through them.
Let's do it. So what's the first option?
A demon or an Otkon.
So I put demon and Otkon kind of in the same categories because it's kind of the same thing. It's just kind of a supernatural evil evil being that's like corrupting children or reproducing offspring. So like I said, so for the demon theory, we got black eyes, very demonic seemingly. We got weird smells like musty or sulfuric, and they got the let us in thing, and they disappear without a trace. So yeah, that's our option with demon.
And then we got the fairy.
Yes. So fairy, like I said, not the pleasant beings you see in pop culture, not usually. So another thing, we have this. They share a lot in common with mealings. They have that earthy smell. I associate fairies with like earth. So if you open up the door and it smells like straight up soil, obviously something's wrong. Could be a fairy.
I still imagine glitter and sparkles.
Yeah, definitely not. I mean, some of them are, sure, like pixies and stuff. But like I said, we'll go into fairies in another episode. And you can learn all about them.
Ghosts.
So this one
I think that's the most likely.
Yeah, this one's a very popular theory because one, they disappear. They appear as children. Don't really know what else they are. They need permission to enter your space. And it seems like ghosts are bound by some kind of weird, arbitrary supernatural rules because you don't really hear about much of them killing people, more just like hurting them. And there was an incident in England in the 1970s where they encountered what they described as a ghostly kid with black eyes, but that might have been something else. That's pretty much the only thing that connected with the black-eyed kids was the little girl had black eyes. That was it. No let me in, none of that, just ghostly being.
Then there's alien or alien human hybrids. I don't believe that.
No, this one's kind of weird because
it's not even fun to think about.
It's not. Well, one of the things. So you know, Men in Black, real life. They're a real life thing, supposedly, right?
Right.
And one of their characteristics is that they're kind of awkward. They're dressed in dark clothes. They don't really look totally human. They speak weirdly. So that's kind of like this. That's kind of like where so some people think that Men in Black are actually aliens or alien human hybrids. Men in Black will come up to your door and interact with you without being prompted. So that's kind of the similarities that I share with that. People think these kids might be alien human hybrids coming down for some particular mission. They have the black eyes similar to the classic Grey the Greys, aliens have those big black eyes. So when you think of an alien, basically that, with a big bulbous head,
Right.
giant black eyes. So that's pretty much the biggest connection there, is their awkward mannerisms and their unnaturalness and their black eyes. So that's the thing on that.
Oh, this next one.
Vampire.
Oh, yeah, you're right. You're right. I'm sorry, I was moving on. I was going too fast. A vampiric being. That's
So, yeah.
just because it's night.
Yeah, well,
right?
I didn't say straight up vampire because, as we discussed in the last episode that covered vampires, there's a whole bunch of vampiric beings. One with this is they need permission to enter your space. It's at night. They don't seem natural. A lot of them are reported with pale skin. So it's kind of unlikely, but it's an explanation. Why not?
Yeah. The next one is robot or automaton.
Yeah, so a lot of people... I like
that word.
One of the more out there ones is because some of them speak with a monotone voice, and they seem like they have like one goal in mind and nothing else. But I don't know. That one's very unlikely, but it is an existing theory that's out there. I just don't put much stock into it.
Ultra terrestrial. That's basically an alien, right?
Well, not necessarily.
What's the difference?
So an alien is an extraterrestrial. An extraterrestrial exists in our dimension. They just come from space or a different planet. Whereas an ultra terrestrial is something from a different dimension. So a lot of people think that ultra terrestrials, they come here for a purpose, and that's to feed on our fear. So a lot of people think that, including John Keel. He's one of the big paranormal dudes that basically brought Mothman into the zeitgeist. So his thing is they feed on our fear. That's what they use for energy, or they collect our fear for energy, or whatever. It's some weird thing like that. Mm-hmm. But that would match them in the case that they're trying to cause fear. And this kind of theory would explain all kinds of paranormal phenomenon. But, so that's the thing with that.
And the last thing is what I hope it is.
Yeah, me too.
A hoax.
I really do hope it's a hoax because I do not want to encounter one. So this one states, it's either people making up stories or kids with because you can buy those all black contacts online. They exist. They're out there. But that doesn't really explain any of the other stuff that's been going on. I mean, maybe Brian Bethel just made up this story. A lot of people accuse him of making up the story to advance his career as a journalist. Uh-huh. But
that makes sense.
It's not if you want to be taken seriously.
Right,
a journalist wants to be taken seriously, so you can't just go making up stories. So I mean,
I can just see myself going to bed tonight.
But
my kids stay up later than me for some reason. I can't get them to go to sleep before me, but I'm just going to be laying in bed tonight. I'm going to open my eyes, and they're like, because it's going to be pitch black. It's going to be like one of them's going to be standing over my bed, and I'm just going to pee myself.
Yeah, maybe they got some of those contacts for Halloween.
All right.
But so that's kind of that seems to be pretty likely. Could be. I hope so. Like I said, I really hope so. So what out of all these options, what do you think is the most likely?
The most likely
yes,
is ghosts.
In your opinion. You think they're ghosts?
Yeah.
Yeah. I can see that, but ghosts, there's not really any, we don't know any actual rules for supernatural stuff, but ghosts don't usually come up to your door and knock on it, is what I'm saying. So yeah, that's my only qualm with that, is ghosts don't really come up to you. Usually you go find the ghost, or you like Ouija board them in or something like that.
Oh yeah, I get what you're saying.
That's my only thing with that.
I was gonna say, because you hear about a lot of stories where they're sleeping, and all of a sudden they see it at the foot of their bed, and then all of a sudden it's on top of them. And
right. Well, those kinds of stories are, if they're sleeping, wake up, and then all of a sudden they're on top of them. That's sleep paralysis. Yeah. And I think I'm going to do a mini-sode on sleep paralysis because there's a bunch of actual folklore associated with that too.
Right.
Or I may do a full episode. I don't know yet. So if I were to guess, I would say they're more in the demonic territory. But I really want to say that they're more of the fairy variety. Because I just like that idea, And then, because they're not like other demonic stories you hear about. They're not like really anything else you hear about with folklore. They're not very easily identifiable. So I think that just kind of like, you don't really hear about a bunch of interaction with fairies, obviously. So maybe I think there's some sort of fae being.
Like I said, it's for someone hearing about fairies being anything but good.
Exactly. It's some sort of evil fae preying on you for whatever reasons, bringing sickness and death, kind of like the Achuri, the hill fairies. So that's my guess on them. Like I said, what I really want them to be is option 8, which is the hoax.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. I guess we'll find out since we talked about them so much.
But that unfortunately concludes this episode.
Yeah. Well, Fortunately,
but
fortunately, but unfortunately, it's fun to talk about stuff.
Yeah.
But Black Eyed Kids, not so much.
Let us know what you think about the Black Eyed Kids on our Snipe Hunt Facebook page or on our Twitter at Snipe Hunt Pod. Was that what our Twitter handle is? Yes. I never knew what our Twitter handle was. I was always wondering. Snipe Hunt Pod. I'm going to have to go follow it. Yeah. Maybe it'll give me something to do on Twitter.
There you go.
You can even leave a comment under this episode on YouTube as well. Yes. Hopefully we never go to video. I wouldn't mind if we ever don't go to video. But please rate and review us on iTunes or Apple Podcasts or whatever else will let you leave a review, including leaving a Facebook recommendation on our page.
Yes, leave a clean review. And I know we said this at the beginning, but like I said, super important. We haven't got a lot of reviews lately, so we're kind of getting stale on that.
This helps the show more than anything, as it helps us get new listeners and keeps us somewhat relevant.
Yeah, as relevant as we can be, I guess.
Plus, we'll read dang reviews on the air.
Yeah, we'll give you credit for it. Be like, shout out to so-and-so.
All right.
Here's what they said.
Yeah, I want to have a long list of names to read. I want to...
Oh, and if it's a negative review, we'll definitely read it
on the air. We
won't have nice things to say, but we'll read it on the air. Along with Spotify and iHeartRadio, you can now check us out on Pandora. Yeah. Not that anyone listens to podcasts on Pandora, but we're on there. It took over a month to get approved for it.
I've always wondered why you would listen to podcasts anywhere but like this generic podcast listening.
Well, the thing is, on Androids, the generic one comes on there as Google Play, and it's the worst platform for music and podcasts of all time. It is just the worst.
Oh, okay.
So at least with Android, you have a bunch more options.
Right.
I'm sure you have plenty of options with iTunes too. But generally, you can do more stuff on an Android. Hence why my Android now has a spooky Halloween theme. You notice all the icons are
nice.
Halloween. See, that's what I like about Android. But anyway,
that is what's
getting off topic. This episode is brought to you by our Patreon supporters. If you'd like to support us in that way, you can go to patreon.com/snipehunt. And for as little as $1 a month, you can get access to topic voting and our blooper reel episodes.
We don't really do a whole lot of that right now because there's just me and Jeremy.
Right, but once we get more, I have the material. I just need to put it together.
We look forward to being able to get that up and going.
Absolutely, and we're not just like, hey, give me your money. Donating to the show helps with hosting fees. I pay them every month. It'd be nice to do this,
and we just really enjoy doing it.
So absolutely. That's one of our favorite things to do, actually. So if you have a topic suggestion, a question, comment, criticism, or if you have a story you'd like us to share on our counter series, you can contact us on social media or email us at snipehuntpodcast@gmail.com. Like we said earlier, what do you think the Black Eyed Kids are? And
we'll see you next week.
Yes.
We'll see you next week on our final episode of Spooktober.
Dun, dun, dun. You noticed them, and they noticed that you noticed them. Alexander Leake, The Mothman Prophecies. At first glance, the legend of the Black Eyed Kids seems to be one that recently spawned from the internet. But a closer look reveals that similar folklore can be found from all over the world. Maybe they're demons, fairies, or aliens. Or maybe they're just a work of fiction. I, for one, actually hope that is the case. But in any case, be wary as you open the door, as you might be met with an abyssal stare. And whatever you do, do not let this frightening folklore inside.
Once again, we want to thank you for listening to Snipe Hunt. Your listening has been noted and will be reported to the proper authorities. All audio used was done so under the protection of fair use.
Logo design is by Ethan Rothfuss. The music you heard in this episode was composed by Mayu and Nature World 1986. We'll continue to search for the unexplained, and we'll hopefully see you on the next hunt.